So we're picking up on this field. Okay, so let's re-upload that file. Go over here, return, and we're going to type in test, press enter, and you can see that we return the value test. We can also then click shorten, and it also returns the value test. So we now know that we're passing this, whatever we type in here, back to JavaScript, which we can then use jQuery to process. So that's that. We know that we've got that done. Okay, so the next thing to do is come up, and we're actually going to extend our function and write the code that we actually require. Now, you probably noticed that in the introduction video, when we went on to min.bz, the correct automatically came over to here, and it was highlighted ready for us to start typing. So what we can actually do is above this, we can say $, and then in brackets document dot ready, and then in brackets we're going to create a function. I'm going to have my start curly bracket and my end curly bracket. I'm going to bring these down slightly and in. So in here we can start typing everything we need. Remember the line terminator on the end of that. So when our document is ready, we're going to use whatever in this function to actually take us over to the text area. And to do this, we just need one line of code. So what we're going to do is we're going to type in again a $, because we're referencing this hash URL, just like we did in the text field and the button, and we're going to say dot focus and then brackets. Okay, so all that's going to do is it's going to put a focus on our text field, so when we enter the website we focus straight onto it. Let's click yes, go over to our page, press enter, and you can see that we've automatically applied focus to that. So we're creating it, making it easier for the user to actually use. Okay, so now what we want to do is continue with creating this function. Now we want to post the URL that we've specified in here. Remember that was the value in the text field. We want to post this to our url.php page, which at the moment is blank. And all this url.php page is going to do is process errors, and it's going to do certain things depending on whether we have typed firstly anything in the box, secondly whether it's a valid URL, and then thirdly we need to check if it's already a min.bz URL. So we're going to say $.post, and then in brackets we want to specify the page, which is url.php, and then a comma, and we want to specify in curly brackets the variables that we're posting. So we're going to call the variable URL, and we're going to say URL. So we're passing a variable called URL, which we can pick up in PHP, and that's the value URL from here. I've called them the same thing, but don't get confused. This and this are both different. So now what we want to do is we want to put another comma on the end of here and say function, and then in brackets data, and then a curly bracket. We're going to end our curly bracket, and we're going to bring them down there, just like we did up here. And what this does is it's going to pass back from PHP anything that was echoed out on our document, and this is where we're going to do our error checking. We're not going to do the validation here, but we're going to check what errors were returned in order to put the errors into the message div. So at the moment that's empty, we've just got a blank space in there, or a space with the paragraphs wrapping around it, but eventually we're going to be passing errors into there. So let's go up. We're now going to be looking at our url.php page and picking up on this variable. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to say alert data. Now data is what's returned from url.php because we've specified that in here. So now what we can do is we can perform more checks in order to see if we're successfully posting data to url.php. So let's first of all say echo hello. I've remembered to escape that because we're using individual quotation marks on the outside. I've come from url.php. Simple. So what this will do now is once we click the button, the shorten button or press enter, we should have that message come up in here, or we should be alerted with that value, sorry. So let's upload that file and that file, And let's go ahead and refresh, and we're going to just press enter. Hello, I've come from url.php. So we've passed this value from url.php to index.php once we've posted and we've alerted that out. So here we can take this data variable and we can perform checks or errors that come back from url.php. Now you might be thinking, why are we doing this all PHP and server side? The reason is we don't want to expose to our users the validation that we are doing. Therefore, if we have maybe something wrong, they can try and manipulate it or change it themselves. We don't want to do JavaScript validation because this can be someone could eradicate it and actually pass through our validation without the correct validation. Hopefully that makes sense. So we're going to be creating a series of if statements here in place of this alert, because at the moment that's useless, and that's going to check what we return from url.php. But the first thing we need to do is we need to actually check if this variable's set, and then we can do what we want with it. So I'm going to say if is set. We're using the is set here to check $_post, and the reason it's $_post is that we're coming from here using .post, and the name of it is URL. Remember, we called this URL and we passed URL from here. So if is set $_post URL, that's it. We can continue in our block. Okay, so now what we can do is echo out $_post URL. So that will pass the URL that we've typed back through to this data variable and we alert it back out. Let's go over, in fact let's upload the file first, and back over, and let's type test. Press enter and we get test. So we're returning the value back from PHP. So hopefully you've got the hang of that. Now what we're going to do is actually start the validation itself. So we're going to redefine this post variable so we don't have to keep referencing it as $_post and then URL. So I'm going to create a new variable called URL, and this is going to equal trim. Now trim takes the white space from the left and the right hand side. This is just sort of for cleaning purposes, just to clean it up in case they were to type lots of spaces, for example, that would be classed as some value, and we don't want them to just type a few spaces and or the user to type a few spaces and that work. So we want to say trim $_post URL. Simple. We've taken this URL and we processed it. Now at this point we don't actually need to apply any security to ensure, like for example the MySQL real escape string function. We're going to be using that later in our func.inc.php. So now what we can do is start error checking. So the first thing I'm going to do is say if empty URL. Remember, now we can just reference it as URL. We want to do something. Else if, and now we're going to check if the URL is actually valid. So we're going to use the filter var function, and this is going to take two parameters. First of all, the URL we want to validate, and now we're going to apply filter validate URL onto the end of that, and if that is equal to false, then we want to do something. So in here what we're doing, and here what we're doing, is we're actually going to be echoing errors that we're going to pick up back over on our index.php page. Else if, this next thing is something that's going to check if it's already a min.bz URL. So what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to leave that out for now, and I'm just going to put 1 equals 2, and that's going to completely ignore that check. Otherwise we can actually generate our code and pass it back. So else we're going to be using a function called gen_code, which we're going to create later, which is going to generate a 6-character including numbers code, and we're actually going to then shorten the URL. So the functions are gen code. We're going to be using code exists to check if the code actually already exists on our table, and then what we're going to do is we're going to shorten it. So pretty simple. Now here for now I'm just going to say echo URL because we will have passed all of our checks.